Pusta Krishna Prabhu from some of the other festivals that have been here, but I've specifically asked to feature him this morning because he has a very deep and profound understanding of Srila Prabhupada through his association as his Prabhupada servant. And I've also been the benefactor of hearing many different commentaries he's made. He's just produced a book called God is Not Dead. And I was going to introduce him, but when I was asking him about his history, it was so candid and so sincere that I think I'd like to share his own introduction from his lips instead of mine, because it's really endearing. So with that, let us all welcome Pusta Krishna Prabhu to our gathering today, our Sangha. Hare Krishna.
Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. On the way down, driving from Santa Cruz, we were listening to Amala Bhakta's tapes on Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I was very pleased to hear that many of Lord Chaitanya's very dear and intimate disciples were physicians. I found that very interesting. My background in Krishna consciousness, I want to just highlight this because it relates to relationship with Srila Prabhupada and the aspect of Srila Prabhupada that I want to convey to you today. None of us came to Krishna consciousness to become part of a big institution, to become part of a big religion, but rather because within our hearts we were searching for something deep and profound that would transform our lives and make our lives significant and worthwhile. I believe that's true for each and every one of us, because more or less all the bhaktas, they are seekers. They are seekers in different ways, but they are seekers ultimately of the truth, of what's going on behind this facade we call material life. And in Hare Krishna. In the beginning, we're put through so many tests in different ways. Each of us has suffered in different ways in our life. If material life had been ecstatic, we would never have come to Krishna consciousness. But we had obstacles, and we had challenges, and we had disappointments. And in my case, I was more or less a seeker, more a seeker. And finally, by the grace of Amarendra Prabhu, as I was driving down the street, one street off of University Avenue, or 13th, in Gainesville, going to class one day, in around October of 1970, Amarendra Prabhu, who was my friend, said, hey, you know, there's a Swami in the Plaza of the Americas, and he's talking about the Bhagavad Gita. And I said, that's very interesting. And I had been reading unauthorized, bad copies of the Bhagavad Gita, really. And I used to quote them to Amarendra and my friends. But you know, the interesting thing was I never knew that the Bhagavad Gita was about Krishna. In fact, when I went out into the mountains in Colorado about 2 years before that, up in Boulder, Colorado, and I camped out on a reservoir, and there was only me and my few books, and I fasted, and when I went back down into Boulder, I saw a Sankirtan party. And I remember the lady who was chanting, there was just a few devotees. Nitai was distributing incense, and this lady was chanting, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. You know, and I thought, wow, that was pretty impressive, you know. And I had no place to stay in the town of Boulder. It was in the summer. And I asked Nitai, can I put my sleeping bag out by your temple? It's okay. can I put a sleeping bag out by your temple? And he said, let me ask the temple president first. And he came back and he said, if you're interested in learning about Krishna, and I had been reading the Bhagavad Gita, then it's okay. And I said, no. So I didn't stay there. I didn't have a clue that the Bhagavad Gita was about Krishna, honestly. And we saw the devotees again in Berkeley, California, chanting on the steps of Sproul Plaza. I saw them again at the million-person march against the Vietnam War, November 15th, 1969. And then there was Raghavendra and I. He said, let's go to the Chinese embassy. They're going to have a demonstration. So we went to the Chinese embassy, and on the way there, tear gas is coming down the street. And I had been tear gassed before in Berkeley, California. I can tell you it's not a pleasant. But as we ran away from the tear gas, we looked down the street, and there was a big Sankirtan party coming down the street in Washington, D.C. And then they were going up the stairs into their temple. And we said, let's go there. So we went there, and we walked up the stairs. And the devotees were all bright-faced from having done Sankirtan, very beautiful. And they said, sit down, take some prasadam. So we sat down, and they gave us some wax paper. And we had some prasadam that was like a mixture of nuts and aniseed and raisins and, that sort of prasadam, almost like a Kadasi prasadam. And that was it. And I thought, boy, these people are really austere. That's all they eat. So, like all of us, for the most part, we were introduced to Krishna consciousness through devotees and disciples of Srila Prabhupada. It's true. And we are very grateful to them for that. So I'm going to relate to you first one experience, and this is not to be for any aggrandizement for myself, but this is to give you some faith also, and to let you know that Krishna is always there for each and every one of us. He's not far off. He's right there, right now, all the time, and he's watching us. And he's determining by his own free will what he'll do. So with all of my searching, I went to the Plaza of the Americas, and Gargamuni defeated me with his Bhagavad Gita as it is. And Amarendra and Gayatri, so generous of heart, really. They opened up their duplex apartment to become the Krishna House in Gainesville. We were the first Krishna conscious students in Gainesville, Florida. And this went on for about 3 or 4 months into January of 1971. And it was early January, and I was in my last quarter of college. I was a chemistry major, and I was already accepted to medical school at that time at the University of Miami. And I had chanted 8 rounds of japa that morning before going off to class. And the feeling came over me that I just don't have the right stuff for this. It's not anything against what I had been learning. I thought everything that I'd been learning was wonderful, because all of the searching that I had done had culminated in this, the personal conception of God, the individual conception of the soul, because I was a Mayavadi. And I determined that morning that I will leave and I will never come back again. And I went to sleep on the temple room floor of the Krishna house. It was a true story and a real story. And so as I rested there, all of a sudden I was transported. And first I saw in the distance a whirl of light and color. And it wasn't distinct or focused. And then all of a sudden, it became crystal clear and focused. Krishna gave me the eyes to see. And what I saw at that time was countless beings, all of them very beautiful and self-effulgent. And all of them had 4 arms. All of them had, like from the waist down, like a golden dress. Almost like if you saw like the genies, you know, that sort of dress. Beautiful golden dress. 2 legs, 4 arms. Beautiful smiles on their face. Fine black hair. And they were of different colors. Some of them were green. Some of them were red. Some of them were blue. Some of them were yellow. And some of them were white. All of them effulgent. And they were flying around like over one another. Countless beings. And I was just amazed, like it says in the Bhagavad Gita, some look upon the soul as amazing. I was amazed. And then all of a sudden, all of those souls, they disappeared within the body of Lord Vishnu. And there was Lord Vishnu with 4 arms. And very similar, if you remember the old blue Bhagavad Gita, with the picture of Lord Vishnu on the cover, very similar to that, but the real thing, transcendental. Form, beautiful, beautiful broad smile, regal crown, and black hair, beautiful dress, effulgent. And when you see Lord Vishnu, you know immediately that here's God. You don't need a degree. And I saw him and I understood this, but I still didn't have ecstasy. I had excitement, but not ecstasy. And then I said, and that was heard in the room by Gargamuni and Bhaktabil, who later became Radhaballabha. Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And then the extraordinary, beautiful face of Krishna appeared. And Krishna's face, so beautiful, broad red smile, transcendental pearls down the side of his face, dainty headdress. Eyes are red, not white, multifaceted, and you could look into Krishna's eyes and Krishna's looking at you, and you just get lost in them. They're so beautiful and restless. And not because I have love, but because something overtook me. And I feel that is Haladni Shakti. That is really the source of all devotion and love for Krishna. I felt extraordinary melting love for Krishna. And with my entire being, I went to embrace him. And at that moment, I was able to experience what rasa is. Rasa is the exchange of devotion with all of the different moods we read about with Krishna. And then Krishna disappeared. And I was in the Brahmajyoti. And Brahmajyoti is not a friendly place. Just like Arjuna, when he passed through the Brahmajyoti with Krishna, he was afraid. And I was afraid. And I thought of Gargamuni, my introducer of Krishna consciousness, and I came back to my body, and I sat up in that room, and I said, God really is a person. And I dropped out of college and became a devotee. And this is how I was introduced to Krishna consciousness. I had not been initiated formally. I did not have neck beads on. So I want to tell you that Krishna is always there for each and every one of us. He's not far away. He is not far away. The Gargamuni and I went to, and now I'm going to talk to you about Srila Prabhupada and why he is a guru and what it means for him to be your guru. We went to Pakistan, East Pakistan, and we're preaching Krishna consciousness there when the war broke out in February of 1971. And finally we made our way to Pakistan West and then to Bombay, where I met Srila Prabhupada physically for the first time. And he was very, very happy to see us because he thought we were dead from the war. And when I came before him and had a chance to talk with him personally and alone, I told him of this event. And he said to me, "Now you must tell them that God is not dead." And so it took many, many decades for me, but that's what this book is. This book is to preach to scientists, those who neglect the fine teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, who are impersonalists. This book is to convince them of the existence of God. It's written by Paul H. Dosick, MD, a doctor and a scientist. So in this book, if they will read this, or if you know skeptics, or people who need more faith in God, this book is for them. And this is my offering to Srila Prabhupada from that standpoint. So I said to Srila Prabhupada, you're the only person I trust in this world. And Srila Prabhupada said, and very humbly, very, very humbly, he said, don't trust me. I may let you down, but trust Krishna. He will never let you down. So this is the first realization that I had that my Srila Prabhupada is a real guru. Because Krishna says, abandon all varieties of religiosity and surrender unto me. And Srila Prabhupada said, surrender unto Krishna. Do you understand? You'll find many spiritual teachers, they want you to surrender to them. They want you to follow them. They want your money. They want their fame. They want their position. And they will exploit you. But not our Srila Prabhupada. This is Srila Prabhupada, real guru. And sometimes, you know, not everyone has had that kind of relationship, and certainly the second, third generations haven't experienced that kind of relationship with Srila Prabhupada. But when people would suggest to me, oh, Pusta Krishna, you should do this, or Pusta Krishna, you should do that. And this is when I was in positions of authority. I was a sannyasi. I was Srila Prabhupada's personal secretary by his choice. And I would come back to Srila Prabhupada and I would say, you know, such and such said, do this or do that. And Srila Prabhupada, more than once, he would say to me, why are you listening to them? They are not your guru. I am your guru. Do you understand? So, who do you want to follow? And who do you want to take shelter of? That's your choice. That's your choice. My advice is this, is that as we get farther away from the actual physical time of Srila Prabhupada, we still have his instructions, you see. And if someone will try to take Srila Prabhupada's honor and digest it, they will not be able to digest it. It's not possible to digest it. What you have to do is to serve him. If they will become servants of Srila Prabhupada, they are transparent via medium to Krishna. They are parampara. But if anything else comes out, I'm telling you, and this is my strong advice to you, then they are servants of their mind. So you have to be able to digest the instructions from Srila Prabhupada. Jagat Guru, Shakti Avatar, you have to be able to digest those instructions and see through those. And then if someone will tell you something that differs, then you will remember what I told you from Srila Prabhupada's mouth. Why are you listening to them? They are not your guru. I am your guru. You understand? ISKCON is the mission of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In the beginning, when there were illusion and troubles, and people didn't understand, and I'm talking big devotees, didn't understand the instructions. In this temple room, at that time, after the departure of Srila Prabhupada, there were 11 Vyasasans in this room, and each thinking they will imitate Srila Prabhupada. They are Paramahansa now. But it didn't turn out to be the case. And we understand that now. So ISKCON has gone a long way in regaining its health. You understand? And that health is critical to the survival of this mission in a pure form. And that's really what I want to convey today. I have so many stories. I could sit here for 25 hours and tell you stories about Srila Prabhupada. But what I'd like to do, just for a moment or two, because I know I don't have that much time, is ask you if you have any questions about Srila Prabhupada that I can help you with to understand. So if any of you have any issues, any discussion, any questions, please feel free to ask, and I will, to the best of my experience and ability, share with you what I think is an approach that would be satisfactory for Srila Prabhupada.
I think it seems like people want to hear the different stories about your experience with Srila Prabhupada.
Okay. You give me 5-10 minutes?
You got it.
Okay. All right. So let's go chronologically. When Srila Prabhupada first went to India with his many devotees, that's when Gargamuni and I came into Bombay. And Prabhupada had arranged big festivals around India. They were called pandals. And, you know, like you have the big pandals outside, these were huge. I mean, 20 times bigger than that. And people would come into the pandals, and they would hear Srila Prabhupada speak, and they would see the Caucasian devotees chanting and dancing. And we then would go out and introduce ourselves to the Indian public and make members there, so that we could help establish the Sankirtan movement in India. But before that time, Srila Prabhupada, because of his deep faith in Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, he deputized us. And it's amazing if you think about it. We were young people, had been in Krishna consciousness 6 months, a year, maybe a little longer, and he deputized us to go all over the world and on his behalf present Krishna consciousness. Brahmananda Prabhu went to East Africa. Srila Prabhupada sent Shruti Das, who's here, and Rishi Kumar, and later, shortly thereafter, me, to help develop South Africa, which now has millions of followers of Krishna. And in Europe, you've seen Dhananjaya Prabhu has talked about his experiences there, how Guru Das and Shyamasundar and Jamuna and others went to London, and some of those pastimes of starting Krishna consciousness there. In France, Yogeshwar Prabhu was in France. I spent time in France before going to South Africa. And all throughout America, we went and started temples. Gainesville was started in the early days, and Amarendra and his family and others developed that, and that's where Alachua came about. And from there I went down to Tampa, and then we went to Houston. And all over the country, there were hundreds of temples, really. And this by people who were just barely introduced to Krishna consciousness themselves. But why did Srila Prabhupada allow this to happen? It wasn't like he said, no, I'll go there and preach. No, he said, you go there and you preach on my behalf. Do you understand? He had so much faith and confidence in us, and he had confidence in Lord Chaitanya, that this would be accomplished. And for the most part, it was. It's really an amazing phenomenon. Not that you had to be a PhD in Krishna consciousness to do this. You were a beginning student, but you went, and when you preached Krishna consciousness, things would come out of you, because we're not this body. We're not the mind. Krishna would place all of these things out there through us, and we would be listening just the same as they would be listening. And this would purify us. So the process, as Amalabhakta Prabhu Maharaj said, is the process of hearing. I want to emphasize this for my God brothers and God sisters, that this is not a process of going inward. This is a process of faith, shraddha. And this is a process of sadhu sangha, hearing. Because it's simply by hearing about Krishna that all of the magic takes place. It's not your doing. Vidyante hridaya granthi, the knot within your heart that ties you to this material plane. It is cut asunder not by you going inward and some mystical experience is taking place. It is not done that way. It is done simply by hearing about Krishna. Tachrinu. Hear about Krishna. And put your antennae out there. And that will tear asunder all of the illusion. It will tear asunder your attachment for your mind. It will tear asunder your attachment for the body and material sense exploitation. And it will ultimately tear asunder your attachment to the false ego. It is simply by hearing. This is what Bhakti Yoga really is about. It is not a mystical process. It is a process of surrender, of sharanagati, hearing about Krishna, hearing the holy name. And I want to share with you just a little bit, for all of our sakes, that, we see on the Back to Godhead magazine, the motto, Godhead is light and nescience is darkness, is it not? It's from the Bhagavatam. When you hear the holy name, don't chase your mind. Don't try to fight false ego with false ego. Simply bring yourself back to the holy name and hear the holy name. So this is what Srila Prabhupada has been giving us all these years, is this process of purification. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. So what I want to do is leave you with that, honestly, and leave you with a feeling for what Srila Prabhupada is as a guru for some of us, and to encourage you to realize that he is more than just a general of the Sankirtan movement. He is your eternal guide in your spiritual life on a very, very personal level. And if you please will take shelter of him, then you can perform your duties, whatever they may be. Sankirtan is one duty that you can perform in devotional service. Pujari work is another. There are 9 processes of devotional service. You can take shelter of 1 or 2 or all 9 of them, like Ambarish Maharaj. But if you take shelter of the process of devotional service with faith and with love, you will be successful in your journey back to Godhead. That's really what it's all about. Sankirtan movement, when we used to go out on Sankirtan, at least for some of us, it was a duty that we would perform on behalf of our spiritual master. And if you will take that feeling that it's my duty to do what I'm doing not based on my own happiness, but it is my duty based on my order from my spiritual master. When you chant the holy name, you chant the holy name on the order of your spiritual master. Just like Lord Chaitanya did when he's talked about Ishwar Puri. His spiritual master had told him, as he said before the congregation of Mayavadis, that I am a fool and I must chant the holy name. And if you will take everything on the order of the spiritual master, you will escape from the delusion of ownership, and you will escape from the delusion of sense enjoyment, even in Krishna consciousness. It will rise to a higher level of satisfaction and joy. Hare Krishna.
Jai, Pusta Krishna ki. And he has written a book, as I said, God is Not Dead, which he is, I think, freely distributing. Or at least.
Actually, I give more of these books out than anything. I gave a box of these books to the bookstore here for them, and all of the money, 100% of it, will go for the temple, for the deities. So if you're inclined to read it, fine. If you would like to give it as a gift to a skeptic, to a seeker, can you imagine? I mean, if I had this book when I was seeking, so much heartache would have been avoided.
Okay.
And if you can give it to a scientist, let them read it, they will be transformed with that. This is what it's for.
So it's up in the gift shop if you want to, if you want to get it.
This one is for
And I'm going to have Ambarendra give a few words, but not. I'm going to sandwich it. Ranadir Prabhu.